Potter Williams.
Oh, what a dreadful contribution from the government ministers. This is an important bill, and we should. Sorry, I've given the member a promotion, not deserved, I should say. This is a dreadful contribution from the government. This is a bill that will buy roughly a couple of loaves of bread, a bottle of milk, and maybe add a little bit of petrol to the petrol tanks of families. It does nowhere near enough to address what it claims to address, the support for children in hardship. And let's start with the name of the bill, Mr. Speaker, because nowhere in this bill do they really define hardship, or do they actually say how they're going to target that hardship and how they're going to measure themselves against those targets. And that's a failure of this bill. If they cannot even define hardship, they interchange it with poverty and deprivation all through their discussion, all through the regulatory impact statement. They do not actually know what they're trying to achieve with this bill. When I refer to the regulatory impact statement, Mr. Speaker, they talk about monitoring it through MSD's DEP 17 deprivation index, but we won't know for a few years whether this particular bill has had any impact on that index, because the bill doesn't actually. The commencement date of this bill is not until April 2016. So families have to, after having been promised much, are going to get nothing until after April 2016. That's how desperate this government is to support the children in hardship, that they cannot bring forward the commencement date to the day after it receives its assent. That's how desperate they are. So let's talk again about what the regulatory impact statement says are the causes of poverty and hardship. In the statement it says that's when the household income is too low, even with good budgeting and discipline, and when their special demands on its budget are too high, from such things as high levels of debt servicing. Sometimes the debt is actually the debt owed to work and income, families who owe the government money for things that they actually need to get on with their lives, such as buying furniture and such like. High net accommodation costs for renters. Unusually high health-related costs, because often people are living in homes that are not fit for children to grow up in, and they have terrible health conditions. Trying to fill major gaps in the stock of basic household furniture and appliances, and high work-related costs, for example, childcare and transport. So the $25 that Mrs. Palmer says, we should all be grateful for, is not going to go very far to support families who have to deal with these issues every single day. And the $25 that the government mentions is actually also a misnomer, because we know that from the tables presented to us in the Select Committee that we're talking somewhere between $12.50 and $23.10 a week that families will get in their hand. $12.50 and $23.10 per family, not per child, per family. And this definitely is not going to go very far to addressing the causes of poverty, as were quoted in the regulatory impact statement. And on top of that, parents are work tested when their youngest child is age 3. The current age is 5, and nowhere have I seen, despite asking the Minister for clarification, any justification why the age group is now 3. Why the age is now 3? The only evidence that was presented to the Select Committee was from the Children's Commissioner, who said that that is at the age at which most people return to work. The age of 3, when their youngest is 3, that is the age at which most people will return to work. Not people who have serious difficulties in paying for transport costs and childcare costs, have high health costs, are dealing with high accommodation costs in relation to their income. So there is no clear justification that that age should have been dropped from 5 to 3. And while we're talking about childcare, we haven't actually traversed access to quality childcare. We haven't thought about what happens in rural or remote settings. We haven't thought about the quality of childcare that's available. We just demand that these parents are work tested and that the children are required to go into care. And do we have care available to match the requirements of the jobs that these people will be likely to hold? No, likely not. That's right. Jobs that might be outside of the standard hours of work of 9 to 5. You know, often we're talking about people who are involved in the retail sector, who might have jobs stacking supermarket shelves at night, might have shift work, and finding childcare to cope with those requirements is really difficult. They often are going to be in low-paid jobs, and they're going to be subject to some of the most precarious working conditions that workers have faced in this country, particularly around 90-day requirements. My colleague Jacinda Ardern talked about the Child Poverty Monitor, and she had the infographic there for you. But I just want to refer to some of the statistics that are in there. That 1 in 10 kids are in severe poverty. That's about 6% of New Zealand's population is in severe poverty. And to quote what's also on that poster, this means that these kids are going without the things that they need, and their low family income means that they don't have any opportunity to change this. I know that we keep stressing the point, but can we stress it? We can't stress it enough that actually an increase of $25 is something, but it is nowhere near enough for these families. And again, we're talking about the payment going to a family which might have 2 or more children. So we're diluting the impact of this. If we have 5 children, 4 children, even 3 children in a family, we're talking about, as I say, you know, a couple of loaves of bread and a bottle of milk. You know, a block of cheese in the supermarket is about $10. We are not actually going to make a significant contribution to bringing these children out of hardship. And we're also going to rely on work and income staff to make the decision about what is suitable work. When we know that staff at work and income are under all sorts of pressures to meet government policies, particularly around work testing, and are they in a position to actually make a judgment about what is the right, appropriate work for these parents to take? Are they the right people to make judgments about the quality of work, or are they under such pressure that actually they will be applying pressure to those parents to take work that may not actually be suitable? Mr. Speaker, I just want to end my contribution with a quote from one of the submitters, the New Zealand Christian Council of Social Services, who made a great contribution to the evidence at Select Committee, and they talked about the fact that this bill doesn't factor in the number of kids in the family. They talked about how more regulation around emergency benefits and increases in obligations are really going to impact the number of sanctions, for example, that might apply to families. They talked about the 80,000 sanctions that had applied over 14 months, which meant that there were 44,000 children in those families with which sanctions applied. That's a huge number of children to be impacted, and sanctions will often mean a cut in benefits. I just want us to think about that for a minute, that we can have the power to sanction these very lowest income families and jeopardise 44,000 children. Mr. Speaker, as you know, we are supporting this because it will put a few more pennies in the purses of people who need it most, but it certainly doesn't go far enough.